This is Christopher John Bjerknes. It is July 22nd, 2025. I'm going to be doing a master class today explaining the Kabbalah of ritual sexual abuse and orgies, the ritual sexual abuse of children. I've been putting this off because I really don't like doing it. It damages my soul to think about these horrific things, but here we go. So the purpose of ritual sexual abuse in Judaism is to obtain redemption for both the abusers and the abused, as well as for the Jewish people as a whole. And there are three ways that this redemption is obtained in this horrific process of sexually abusing children and others. One is the suffering of the child, of the victim. Suffering causes redemption. That's why they forced themselves to have a Holocaust, so that they could obtain redemption for their sins through the suffering of the Holocaust. An individual who suffers in life is said to obtain tikkun, rectification, correction for whatever its sins that they committed in a previous life that need rectification in this life. They are forced to suffering, and the nature of their suffering reveals what it is that has to be corrected. So the holy sparks are released from the Kelly pot of the sin and of the evil inclination and of the deviancy that has to be corrected. And they see this suffering as a blessing because it frees them from receiving the infinitely worse suffering that they would otherwise get by being cast into the Jewish hell of Gehenna, the lake of fire, where they would suffer infinitely worse. And they also perceive it to be a correction because in their next Gilgul, in their next reincarnation, they will have been perfected through their suffering. So they perceive that suffering as a form of redemption and as a form of return to God, teshuva, redemption and return. The Messiah himself is obliged to suffer. That is spelled out in Isaiah 53. And the Shabbatians and the Frankists perceive that as suffering not only of Messiah, son of Joseph, but also of Messiah, son of David. So Messiah, son of David, Shabbatai Tzevi, Baruchia Russo, Jacob Frank, all had to suffer by entering into the prison of the material Gentile world, the Sitra Achra, the evil other side of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. And this suffering enables them to penetrate into the Gentile world and destroy it from within, just as Jesus Christ had done by entering into the Gentile world and destroying it from within. So this is a redemptive process of suffering. Jesus had to suffer by entering into the prison of the Gentiles. Shabbatai Tzevi suffered by converting to Islam and entering into the world of the Muslims to subvert them from within, as a Trojan horse, as a crypto Jew, the way that Esther subverted the Persians to kill the Amalekites by marrying King Ahasuerus and hanging Haman and his 10 sons on the gallows that they had constructed to hang the Jews, and then slaying, I think, 74,000 Amalekites in this way. So though they had to suffer by entering the prison of the Gentiles, the Sitra Achra, it obtains redemption and salvation and atonement for the Jews. And even their messiahs have to undergo this process. Jacob Frank entered the Catholic Church in order to subvert and destroy it. A second aspect of how they obtain redemption is redemption through sin, the holiness of sin. They believe that they are obliged to destroy the Torah, the Holy of Holies of the world of creation, of Bria, and that the Torah should be is an evil product of the world of creation, and that it forms the map of creation, and that creation itself, the creation of the 6 days, is a malformed creation, and that the Jews should create their own creation and become their own gods. So they have to destroy the Torah, the Holy of Holies of the world of creation, which is the world of Berea. And they should substitute in its place the world above the world of Bria, the Torah of the world of Atzilut, which is Shekinah in her purest form. The Holy of Holies of the world of Atzilut is Shekinah herself. And there was confusion among the Shabbatians and the Frankists as to what this Torah of Atzilut, this Holy of Holies of Atzilut, would actually constitute. But it has deep roots in Kabbalah itself. And Kabbalah is to be the new Torah of the Messiah. And Shabbatai Zevi had his own Kabbalah. Baruchia Russo, Asman Baba had his own Kabbalah. Jacob Frank had his own Kabbalah. Schneer Solomon, the founder of the apocalyptic messianic cult of Chabad Lubavitch, had his own Kabbalah, which is heavily based on the Kabbalah of Isaac Luria. And so the idea is to destroy creation, and Gentiles are part of creation. So Gentiles have to be destroyed, but they also have to destroy the Torah of creation. And Schneer Solomon, the Alter Rebbe, said that the Torah of the world of Beria, of creation, is the Talmud, and then the world of formation beneath that, the world of Yetzirah, is the Mishnah, and then in the world in which we inhabit, Asiya, the world of action, the Torah, the Holy of Holies, was the Holy of Holies in the first temple where Shekinah resided, and in which they had the Ark of the Covenant, supposedly with the 10 tablets of the 10 commandments. And that was the Torah of the world of Asiya. When the first temple was destroyed, Shekinah left, and then the second temple was built, and she did not re-enter the second temple, but the flowing of the energies of Shekinah entered it, and that was the Torah, the Holy of Holies of the second temple. When the second temple was destroyed, the Shekinah enters into the Jews when the Jews study the Torah. Now that's according to Chabad Lubavitch, but the Shabbatai Frankists and the unspoken dogma of Chabad Lubavitch, which is Frankist, is that this Torah, the Torah of the Talmud and the Torah of the Pentateuch and the Torah of the Tanakh, the Old Testament, has to be obliterated. And it is obliterated by doing the opposite of the 613 mitzvot, where they say that you should study the Torah and perform the 613 mitzvot to invoke and induce the presence of Shekinah. The Shabbatai and Frankists say it's the exact opposite, that they attain to the Torah of the highest world, the world of emanation, Atzilut, by doing the inverse of all the commandments, by shunning the commandments, and by following their own free will. Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law of the Shabbatai and Frankists. And that's truly the essence of the Torah of Atzilut, of the world of emanation, of the highest world, the world of Shekinah. is that the Jew then becomes him or herself their own gods, and their will becomes the map of creation, and they can reform creation in whatever form they want. But they are nihilists, so in order to get to that stage, they have to destroy creation. And they destroy creation by doing the opposite of the map of creation. The map of creation is the Torah of the world of Beriah, is the Talmud, is the Torah of the Pentateuch and the Old Testament, which is why Jacob Frank, when he infiltrated the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church in Poland, informed them as to what the rabbis believed in the Talmud and its anti-Christian, anti-Jesus passages, because that helped him to get Christians on his side to destroy rabbinical Judaism and destroy the Torah of Beriah, which is the Talmud itself. So he penetrated into the prison of the Gentiles, subverted them, took them over, and used them to accomplish his own goals. And he was also setting them up for the Russian Revolution, for Bolshevism, and for the eventual destruction of Christianity itself. So this is how they were to obtain redemption through their holiness of sin, by doing the inverse of all the commandments, and obviously ritual sexual abuse of children, committing adultery in orgies, producing only bastard children, commingling with Gentiles. All of this is the opposite of the 613 mitzvot. So they enter into the Gentile world and they perform all this ritual child abuse, both in the Gentile world and within the Jewish world, to spit on the Torah, to spit on the God of creation, and to spit on the God of creation's creation. The third means that they have of obtaining redemption is to scapegoat the Gentiles. And in this context, one of the ways that they scapegoat the Gentiles is by accusing the Gentiles of anti-Semitism for pointing out that the Jews engage in ritual sexual abuse of children, beginning very early with circumcision and with the sucking of the wound in circumcision. But in the news, it has come out again in Israel that the rabbis and many Jewish communities, both secular and religious, and the highest powers, the leaders of the community, are engaged in this ritual sexual abuse of children. And that had been brought out on Oprah's show back in the 80s. I saw it as it happened, where they had a Jewish woman explaining how she was involved in ritual sexual abuse, how she bore a baby that was then ritually sacrificed. And I always said, I've been saying for decades, that that Oprah clip represents the fact that she was a Frankist, and her family descended from Frankists, and she described how her lineage descended from this cult that did this, and it was immediately apparent that she was part of the Frankist cult. It wasn't her fault. She was a victim of it all. So let's have a look at that, and we're going to look at that, and then we're going to look at the stories coming out of Israel, how they're having hearings and looking investigations into the fact that this ritual abuse has permeated Israeli society and the top leadership is involved in it. And then I'm going to get into how all this ties into Shabbatai Frankism and Judaism in general, and why it is done to obtain redemption through suffering, to obtain redemption through the holiness of sin. So this is when this woman that I've been talking about appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show back in May of 1889. I think it was before May 11th. And I say that Oh, maybe it was May 11th because the Jewish Telegraph Agency responded to it. And so let's watch what she said.
As a child, my next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity. My next guest treats ritually abused children in her therapist practice. She feels that the problem is much more widespread than any of us can imagine. Says there's no doubt in her mind that children and adults that she treats are telling the truth. Tina Grossman, we're glad to have all of you join us here on the show. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
And so you were
Right.
abused.
I was born into a family that believes in this.
So she is obviously in a Shabbatayan Frankist family. And it was the Shabbatayans who then followed Jacob Frank into this hellish world that this poor woman has endured.
And this is, does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
So this is part of the crypto-Judaism of Frankism. They appear to be normal when they are converts. They appear to be the most sanctimonious and pious Catholics or Muslims in the community. They outwardly perform all the rituals. They observe the Sabbath of whatever faith it is that they have pretended to convert to, so that in secret in their homes they can conduct all of these satanic Judaic rituals without being detected and without interference.
Really? And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before. And
so when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I blacked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal. Mm-hmm. I always thought.
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to,
Whose babies?
There were people who bred babies in our family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not. Or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back.
Now, this is a violation of the Torah, because in the Torah, Abraham was commanded to sacrifice his son Isaac, and he bound him up, and he was getting ready to sacrifice him. But a ram was given in the place of Isaac, and this was supposedly to be the end of human sacrifices to Moloch, as the Canaanites had done. So one of the ways that they can invert the Torah of Beriah, the Torah of creation, the Pentateuch, is to begin to sacrifice children again. And the other way that the way that the Jews originally did it was, instead of sacrificing animals, they began to sacrifice Gentiles. So the history of it was that initially they would sacrifice their own firstborn. And then when Abraham demonstrated that he was willing to sacrifice his own son Isaac, it all transferred into animal sacrifices. And those animal sacrifices took place in the temple. After the temples were destroyed, they could no longer engage in animal sacrifices, and Gentiles were sacrificed in the place of the animals, because Gentiles are conceived of being equivalent to beasts, being animals, but they have a human form and they have an impure set of three souls. So Jesus Christ became the scapegoat and the sacrifice for them to obtain redemption through human sacrifice. But they were still not supposed to sacrifice Jews. They were supposed to sacrifice Gentiles in the Jews' place, especially Christians who bore their cross like the Lamb of God, Jesus Christ, who was sacrificed up on Passover to bear the sins of the Jews and grant them redemption. So we have this historical process. They originally sacrificed their own children, obviously. Isaac was to be sacrificed, but then since Abraham was willing to do it, that ended that. Animals were sacrificed in the form of the ram in the place. Then Gentiles were sacrificed in the form of Jesus Christ and the Christians. But now, to undo all of that and undo all of the commandments of the Torah of Beriah, they start to sacrifice their own children again and obtain redemption through that sin in order to destroy the map of creation, destroy creation itself, become gods themselves, and attain to the world of Atzilut, the highest world, and obtain the Torah of the world of Atzilut, which is Shekinah herself. They become Shekinah, they become God in this way by sacrificing their own children.
You were telling us earlier that the practice with the Kilroy death was a religion called
Palamayombe, which not all people who practice Palamayombe obviously sacrifice. I think what we're looking at is a worship of evil here.
Right.
Taking normal or standard religions and converting them to the worship of evil.
Right. And I just want to emphasize that you don't have to be Caribbean to do it.
No.
Yes.
The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean, it's not a very typical thing.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies. But anyway, so you witnessed the sacrifice.
Right. When I was very young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant.
And the purpose of sacrifice is to what? Is to bring you what? What are you sacrificing for?
For power.
Power. And so, were you ever used? Were you ever used yourself?
I was molested. I was raped several times.
And what's your mother doing
She's
in all of this? What's her role in all of this?
I'm not exactly what her role is. I haven't, recovered all of my memories, but her family was extremely involved. She brought me to it. Both of my parents brought me to it.
And where is she now?
Last question report tonight at 10.
I'm sorry, I don't think that's the full video, so let me pull up that full video. On YouTube. Well, anyway, she goes on to describe how this ritual abuse took place, and then there was a response in the Jewish Telegraph Agency where they called Oprah and the Oprah Winfrey Show to task, and Jewish leaders, this was reported in the Jewish Telegraph Agency and all over the media, met Tuesday with Jewish leaders in Chicago to deal with the fallout from statements on an edition of the talk show last week accusing Jews of ritual murder. The program's production company, Harpo Inc., Oprah backwards, read as if in Hebrew, requested the meeting and asked the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith to assemble Jewish leaders to discuss the program. It was broadcast May 1st and watched by an estimated 8 million households. So maybe it was May 1st, 1989. So they go through and they try to say that this woman was crazy and it was not really true what she was saying. And they tried to discredit it. But then very recently, we see these identical accusations being made all over Israel. So obviously this woman was telling the truth. And all of this ties in precisely with this Shabbatai and Frankist nihilism and belief in destroying the commandments of the Torah of Beriah, the commandments of creation, the map of creation, the world of creation, the Talmud, the Tanakh, especially the Pentateuch, in favor of Kabbalah and the world of emanation, the world of Atzilut. So this is an article from Israel Hayam, Bottom of Darkness. Children raped in ritual ceremonies expose the horrors. And it talks about blessed who releases the bound. So this is what I'm talking about, this process of obtaining redemption through the suffering. The children suffer, and because they suffer, their souls undergo tikkun, rectification, and correction, so that in the Gilgul, when they're reincarnated, they are more perfect and ready for the world to come, and they also are not sent to Gehinnom for correction, which would be much, 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 much worse. And it describes the tortures that are imposed upon these children to impose this suffering. Obviously, these perverts get sexual joy out of doing this, and that's the primary reason for all of this. But they couch their perversion in this religious mythology that they are helping this child by unbinding it from this world of creation so that its soul can permeate and enter into the world to come and rise to the level of the Torah, of the world of emanations, of the world of Atzilut, the Holy of Holies, of God, Shekinah, in the purest essence of that energy. So they pretend that they are being good to these children by putting them through this horrific suffering, which cleanses, corrects, and obtains redemption for them so that they become unbound. The bound is the reference to Isaac. When Isaac was about to be sacrificed, he was bound. And this refers to freeing this child from having to undergo this process of human sacrifice. So they're portraying it as if they are being good to these infants and children in order to elevate their souls and free the sparks of their souls from the Kelly pot of the world. Blessed who releases the bound, victim, sacrifice, punishment, correction, transcendence, redemption. These are recurring concepts in the testimonies of the victims, the prayers, the mutterings, the ecstasy surrounding the victims, the joy of all this. This relates to the emotional world of Yetzirah, which is the world of foundation, which is the world below Beriah. And in this emotional world, you have the emotions of love and joy, and you have the emotions of pain. It relates to the Greeks, the idea of Eros and Eris, the god of love and the god of pain and suffering. And so there has to be a balance of these two emotions to balance out the world. The extreme pain, humiliation, and torture, the crushing of personality and soul, testimony after testimony from women who experienced organized childhood abuse that included group rape performed within ceremonial and ritual frameworks. We collected information about organized ritual child abuse, a phenomenon recognized worldwide. Most women we interviewed came from religious, Zionist, and ultra-Orthodox communities, although Shish Shabbat received additional testimonies about similar cases in secular society. As I've been discussing, Judaism is a product of the Jewish mindset. The Jewish mindset predated Judaism and created Judaism as an expression of its mindset. Secular Jews have the same Jewish mindset. They are a product of the identical traditions, and shedding off the cloak of Judaism, which provides the pretext for all this, does not change their behavior, does not change their mindset, does not change their practices, their traditions, or their conduct. And many of these people who are atheists are in fact Shabbatarian. Frankists, the communists, had these same orgies that the Shabbatarian Frankists had, and so did the Zionists, and though they portrayed themselves as atheistical, that was just a cover for the fact that they were descendants of the Shabbatarians, the Dermais, and the Frankists. Several rabbis' names appeared repeatedly in some testimonies. Multiple complaints filed at different police stations around the country were all closed relatively quickly. Jews know that they're all supposed to cover up for other Jews. That's a part of the religion. You're supposed to love your brother. Part of loving your brother applies only to fellow Jews, means that you cover up their crimes. And since all of this is based on Judaism itself, they don't perceive it as a sin. They perceive the sin as obtaining rectification, and they perceive the sin as holy. Evil is viewed as good in Jewish dualism. Not outsiders in the community, I remember a pentagram on the floor, usually in red. When the ceremony was in the forest, the pentagram was marked with a hoe and surrounded by lit candles in a circle. The rabbi would bless, blessed, who releases the bound. Men around prayed with prayer shawls dressed in black, while the rabbi wore a white robe. There's a lot to unpack right there. The pentagram represents Samael and Lilith. It represents the fifth emanation on the tree of life, Gevurah. It represents the planet Mars. It represents Samael and Lilith, who are Satan. It represents punishment, accusation, temptation, and trial and severity for all that. So the children are being put on trial in the wilderness. The wilderness, the forest, is the mansion of Satan. It is the place where goats are sacrificed to Samael, to Azazel. The scapegoat from the temple was sent out into the wilderness and pushed off a cliff. So all of this is done in the domain of Satan, so that these children's sufferings are offered up as a bribe and a sacrifice to Satan. The red obviously represents Edom, it represents blood, it represents the soul. So they are corrupting the souls of these children as a sacrifice to Satan. They are Satanists. And it represents, again, this attempted sacrifice of Isaac. And Abraham was relieved of that burden of sacrificing his own son. But in order to obtain redemption through sin and holiness through sin, they have to invert that. So they have to plunge the dagger into bound up Isaac and sacrifice him. And it is an ending of substituting animal sacrifices, both the sacrifices of animals in the temple, there's no temple to sacrifice them in, and the sacrifice of Gentiles through primarily through Christianity, they are reverting back into sacrificing their own children to do the opposite of what the Torah of Berea commands. The Torah of creation, the Holy of Holies of the world of Berea commands. They're doing the exact opposite by now sacrificing their own children and unbinding themselves from these commandments. Consider how easy it is to tell a child they were born from the power of impurity, that is the Sitra Achra, the evil other side, and therefore must suffer. This is exactly what they did to Gentiles with Christianity. They duped Gentiles into believing that Gentiles are conceived in sin and bear the burden of the sin of Adam. So this is the same kind of psychological brainwashing and screwing with the minds of Gentiles they do to their own children, and they put the burden of sin onto the victim of their sins, just as the Jews did to the Christians. These mantras penetrate deeply, especially when a child is abused. Christians are abused in this way and brought to the brink of death, certainly psychological death, but in several cases I encountered part of the abuse involved nearly killing the victim before allowing them to survive. That's exactly what happened to Isaac. In such states, consciousness transforms and implanted beliefs become part of one's very essence, because what creates a stronger bond than nearly dying and then surviving?